Right, so can you all see the agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the idea for today is the brief introduction. By the way, we are recording the session, so we'll be able to give you copies of the recording afterwards, so you don't have to make furious notes about things. Pippa's going to do an introduction to T-Vision and where the company is at the moment with all the things that are going on. Then Karen and I are going to talk about the roadmap for the product. So that's both the Microsoft roadmap and the Bevica roadmap. And then part of today is really about what the future is for the product in terms of Bevica SaaS, which is where all our kind of efforts have been going in the last last year or so. So we'll be talking about the pros and cons of moving to the SaaS environment. Then I've got some bits and pieces to show you on how the software works. It's really to give you an idea of how the new look and feel of the product is, what you can do, what you can't do, and really that we think now there's no reason why no one could move over to the Bevica SaaS product. You just need to understand that some things are different, some things are better, but I think it's all good. It's looking good for the future. And then in the end, we have if we have time permitting, we've got time for questions. People can ask any questions they want. During the sessions, if you've got a question, if you jot it down in Teams comments, or if it's particularly urgent, you can raise your hand and we'll try and stop and answer any questions. Otherwise, we'll ask at the end of each section, we'll ask you if there are any questions and we can go into more detail if we've missed something or something wasn't clear.
That's raise your hand using the Teams function as opposed to that, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Do you want us all on mute for this then?
Yes, why not? Just in case people are furiously tapping away or answering emails. Okay, so Pippa, over to you for the T-Vision introduction.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I thought I'd start off by telling you a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted T-Vision. So we had the first lockdown back in March last year, and we were very fortunate, really, that we were coming into that first lockdown off the back of our best ever year. So T-Vision's financial year ends 30th of April. So we'd already got a kind of a great year in the bag. And like everybody, we had to react quite quickly, getting everybody working remotely. Fortunately, we were already in a position where many of our staff had worked from home in the past, and so for us that wasn't such a big change, but obviously far greater use of things like Teams, far more meetings, internal meetings than we've ever had before, and a lot more kind of structured communication across the business. When the first lockdown kind of came about in March, we had this scenario where we were actually really lean at that point in time, which was quite lucky, because after about a month we found that a lot of our projects got put on hold. So we had something like 42%, I think it was, of our projects were put on hold about a month after the initial lockdown. And that obviously was quite a shock to the system, and I know all of you will have had shocks to your businesses as well. And then we sort of changed our business plan for the new year coming, that actually the most important things that we could do was make sure we retained staff and put in place a budget that basically allowed us to have a worst case scenario of kind of break even and take it from there. Actually, it turned out to be better than that. By the summer, all those projects had come back online. We didn't have to make anybody redundant. And so we kind of retained everybody, and then we actually started building again. So we added 2 more resources into our support team. We felt support was very lean, and there was a scenario where another reseller went bust. So their staff was suddenly available in the marketplace. We were very lucky that we had Josh, who's our support team leader, join us, and also Marcus, who's part of, he's a support resource, but he's technical as well, so he tends to do some of the debugging and that sort of things. So they joined us in the summer, and we're now a long way through our year, and you know, it's been a pretty good year for us, all things considered. We're now actually going through another phase of building resource. So we've got 3 people joining us in the next 6 weeks. I've got a lady joining us. She's coming over from America and relocating to the UK with her family. And she's called Teresa. She's basically an experienced consultant. She's got 20 years of Navision and Business Central. And I think what she will bring to us is knowledge of some of the solutions that are out in the States, knowledge of the US partners and how they all work together. Some of our clients ask us to put in implementations into the US, so it'll be good for us to have resource that understands things like sales tax and those sorts of things. And she's also got an edge in manufacturing, food and drink manufacturing, so that's another thing that she'll bring to us. The second resource who's joining us, who's actually coming on board next week, is Jose. He's joining us from the NAV people, and he's got 20 years experience. He's originally from Portugal, but he's been living in the UK for a number of years, and his family happened to have experience of vineyards, so he's really interested in the Bevica product and finding out more about that. Both Teresa and Jose would be described as generalists, so they know the whole suite of functionality within Business Central, as it's now known, and they're both able to design systems, understanding how to pull together the different functionality from the suite of products and bring you a solution, if you like. So that's what they're kind of adding to our business. And then we've got a junior joining us, Upasana. She's British. She's got a lot of experience of a third-party product that a number of you use, which is Continua, which is document capture, automation of documents. Less experience of the whole suite of Business Central. She would know finance and purchasing and sales ledger would be her strengths. The other thing that she's done is she's done quite a lot of work creating videos, and that's very much part of how we're moving to facilitate, I think, stronger support, creating videos around functional processes that people can then pick up and watch at any point in time, rather than the old how-to documents that we had. So that's why she's joining us. So that's kind of some of the resourcing changes that we've got going on. And then I just wanted, people often ask me about, you know, kind of what's the latest thing, what should I be thinking about, what should I be looking at, and definitely 2021 is the year of RPA. So RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation, and it's sort of linked in with last year's buzz, which was AI, and it's the ability to be able to automate some of the processes around finance and operations and across your business, really, that instead of people making the decision, what you are doing is creating code that is making the decision for you. Now, all of us have seen some of that in our businesses over the years. If you think about purchase order authorization, somewhere somebody would have structured some questions around perhaps limits as to how much somebody is allowed to authorize, and then the software would go and check that limit against what was being authorized, and would either say yes, that can go forward, or no, that actually can't, that needs somebody else to authorize it. Now, what's coming to the fore is the ability for sort of super users to be able to write very low code flows in their systems, and so you can actually start creating logic I worked with some of this last week. Somebody had a customer services chat box, and I wanted to cancel an order, and I couldn't get through on the telephone, but actually I was able to write in the chat box that I wanted to cancel an order, and they checked my details, and everything lined up with the order number that they knew that they had in terms of the data, and they were able to cancel the order from the chat box, which is all just software that has lots of if statements, if you like, written in the background. Now, in the old days, you would have had to have had a coder to write that kind of thing. Somebody like Robert, who spends his life writing code. But now what they're doing is they're creating desktop functionality that allows people to start writing this code themselves. And really, all RPA is the automation of your processes through software, so through code. But instead of you having to write the logic behind the code and write the if statements, you're basically able to click and select. Microsoft, if you bring the next slide on, Claudio, Microsoft brought an RPA specialist last June, and they're already bringing it into the Power Platform stack. So though some of you might have played with the Power Platform a little bit, it includes Power BI, which is a reporting tool. It includes what used to be called Flow. Microsoft Forms, I don't know if you've seen those at all, but those very much connect into it. Sorry. Number one, turn the phone off. The Microsoft Forms connect into it, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to enable their customer base to be able to automate more and more of their processes, and this is kind of coming in with the with Business Central. It doesn't have to just be Business Central, so it's not only around your main business tool, business software. You can use it for other flows to other solutions. So if some of you are using a CRM solution, you'd be able to flow data and flow logic between systems and basically start automating more and more of your processes. So I just wanted to let you know that that is the sort of the thing that we are investigating the most at the moment, and spending our time looking at how that might help our customer base automate more. Okay. Thank you, Claudio.
Okay, thanks, Pippa. Okay, so now we want to talk about the roadmap and where the product is and where it's going. And I think, like we've said before, and I'm sure most of you know, the emphasis from Microsoft now is really Business Central is one part of the whole of their ecosystem. So this kind of quite busy diagram really tries to show all the things in Microsoft's head when they talk about their business applications and where we sit inside that. So we're part of the Dynamics 365 in the middle there in red. And then we have very close access to primarily the sorts of things that we're interested in: Office 365, the Power Platform, so that's Power BI and the Power Apps, and the common data service and the Azure services. So hopefully I can show you a bit later on when we look at Business Central that the links from Microsoft to all of these, they've built lots of them already. And they've made a lot of the links available to, they call it no code or low code. So the idea is that anyone can pick up a Power Platform, Power App, link a flow in and then do some work. In reality, it needs a bit of knowledge. You need to be a little bit technical. But the idea is that all these things are within the capability of you, the customers, and where you can't do that, then we can help from our side to do the extras, if you like. But so when we think of Business Central now, especially on SaaS, all of this comes to mind. So the solutions we come up with going forward might not be we build something in Business Central. It might be that's something that needs a Power App hooking into a common data service that someone can access on their phone, but then maybe the data would come into Business Central. So in terms of the nuts and bolts of where we are with Microsoft, so this is the Business Central roadmap. Like you all know, they have wave updates every 6 months. So at the moment, we are kind of almost ready to do April 2021 wave update. And they give us details of what's been released and what will be released. So if I just click on planned releases. So if you're interested to see what is in the software, or what's coming up that's new as far as Microsoft are concerned, then you can click on links like this, and here they go through what they're planning to put live, both in, so there's a public preview so people can get to see it first, and then it's available to everyone. They're not committing to anything on this list, they're just saying we expect it to go live at these times. So depending on where you are in your product version, if you move over to SaaS, you'll obviously get everything up to that point that's in the SaaS product, and then these will just roll up every 6 months or so, new extra bits and pieces. So if I scroll down here, for example, one that Cindy saw or noticed a couple of weeks ago, there's an improvement to bank reconciliation where you can roll back reconciled transactions, which sounds quite nice. Looks like they're improving something to do with contacts and interactions. And that one, we haven't looked at that yet, but that sounds quite interesting, where you can roll back posted dimensions on GL entries. So we're always looking at these, but it's information that's publicly available that everyone can have a look at. The other thing that's interesting from a roadmap point of view is the ideas that Microsoft want both you and us to give them. So there's a platform where you can search for ideas or suggestions that people have made, or you can create your own. So if I go into something like inventory, so we've been putting lots of suggestions in, more on the technical side, to let us do Bevica functionality we want. But these are things that anyone, for example, that one, that's come up before, I've heard of that, people asking for that. So you put it on here, you vote for it, and at some point Microsoft say, yes, that's a good idea, no, that's not. And if you were to go through this list, you'd see that there are quite a few things here that do make it into the next version or the next release of the product. So maybe somewhere else to have a look and try and push Microsoft in certain directions. Yeah, just ongoing releases. We keep an eye on those web pages to see what's coming up next. But in terms of the overview of what Microsoft are trying to do with their upgrades, this is kind of a salesy list. This is what they're trying to achieve where they're up with their upgrades. So those things in bold. Some of them we'll be more interested in. So the modern development tools, that's something that we're always keeping track of. But things like better with Microsoft 365, that's where SaaS really comes into its own. That they're always improving things in terms of the integration with all their other bits of software. So as I said before, the 365 and Power Platform, that kind of runs alongside the releases in the same way. I haven't gone into any detail here because it's a huge topic, all the different areas that they cover. They all have their own websites, their own web pages, their updates, their releases, their ideas, etc. So I won't go into detail now. In terms of Bevica SaaS, so this is the roadmap so far with our product. We launched it last year, as you know, and for us, the internal proof of concept was the key, both for TVision, where in the SaaS environment, I think we proved to ourselves that it's possible to move Bevica over. So now we have 2 customers live on the SaaS environment, one implementing, and what they're using is the basic fundamentals that you all know from your current systems. So it all works. It works quite nicely, and we're mirroring the releases from Microsoft in terms of our own releases. So our plan is that every 6 months we do a major release of new functionality, and we do kind of minor hot fixes as we go along. So to mirror the idea of Microsoft, if I go to our Bevica releases, we have our own, let's go there, let's go to the top. We have this on Freshdesk, which is our new kind of customer portal, where we can give you a login. You can read all about the new features that we've written in Bevica in SaaS. There's lots of help pages you'll see on the side here. These are all things that we've written. There's about 60 or 70 web pages. But this one in particular, this Bevica Essentials releases, really details every time we do a release, be that a major or a minor one, we put in here. So if I scroll down, you'll see a bit more detail. Let's pick this one, for example. So this release we did middle of last month. We've added some new features to do with the reservations and paid reserves, and then we fixed some bugs. So this is kind of a history of all the changes we're making, and we'll keep this updated as we go along. We don't have yet a page that shows what's coming in the future, but that's one of the plans for me for the next 2 to 3 months, is to have a page here where people can go and have a look and see what to expect in the next couple of months. So at the moment, we are averaging a new release every month or so, or just under. If I scroll to the very bottom to our first release, so all these things, what came out of version 1, if you like, and we can go. I can go into more detail of these a bit later on when I show you the software. If anyone wants access to Freshdesk, just let me know, and I can get our support desk to give you a login, and you'll be able to see all the articles that are written. So that's the SaaS product, and that's really where we're putting most of our focus at the moment. In terms of the enterprise version, or the on-premise version that you're all used to, we have upgraded it to version 16, but the product is now onto version, well, will be version 18 in the next month. And what we've realized is that we can't really keep 2 products updated. And with all the capabilities that are in SaaS, we don't see that there's a need to keep the 2 products updated. So what we're doing is we're moving all the functionality from Bevica Enterprise in a kind of priority order into the SaaS product, so that there's a product available for everyone to re-implement to when you plan to move to the latest version. And we really think that moving over to the real SaaS model is where everyone should be, for all the reasons that we've been talking about, and we're going to be covering in a bit. So in terms of what's in currently what's in Bevica SaaS, so these are kind of cherry-picked from that first release we did last year, and these are all things that are in the current version that you're all using. The ones that have got little asterisks next to them, I think what we've been able to do is copy over the principles of how it currently works and improved it. So things like additional charges, traditionally in the on-premise version, you'd put traditional charges on purchase orders, but because we were moving it over and kind of redesigning it, we made them available on every transaction. So be it a sales return, a sales order, purchase order, transfer order, you can add additional charges to all of them. So we thought, let's just get it done at the beginning so everyone can use all the transactions rather than just release purchase orders and then have it on some roadmap for the future. We've improved rotations a lot. So now rotation numbers are part of the item ledgers, whereas before they were not quite so integrated. And then probably the biggest difference is how we manage stock availability. And I definitely want to show you that later on, where at the moment on a sales order, you can only put a quantity on a sales order if you have the stock in inventory. Whereas in SaaS, you can put any quantity on a sales order, which means that you can record kind of demand from your customers much more freely. And then there's a way of reserving stock and managing who gets what stock in a slightly different way, but I think it gives us more flexibility in the product. Improvements on manifests. So again, we've added lots of different transactions to manifests. And then something that's new that one of Andrea's mini projects is the e-commerce API. So we've designed a kind of a standard API out of Bevica that web designers can use. And interestingly, both our customers that have gone live on Bevica SaaS, they're both using that. And it's working very well to pull in sales orders from websites and push out things like item details, customer details, stock availability. The duty management and sales purchasing pricing, hopefully you'll see later on that that's pretty much what you're used to. We didn't see any reason to change any of that. The principles are the same with the costings and the duty rates. So in terms of what's next, what we've got so far is what I would consider to be the core, and then in about a month's time we'll be releasing broking and Sellerage. So I know some of you are particularly interested in the broking and the Sellerage. So that's being able to buy and sell paid reserves, charge people for holding the stock. And alongside with that, because it seemed kind of the right thing to do at the time, is we're starting integration with LiveX. So the ability to put Elwins in the system and pull in market prices, and similarly with Wine Searcher, being able to pull in market prices and display them inside the software. We do plan to do more integration with LiveX and Wine Searcher over time, but that'll probably come in later phases, later in the year or next year. And then for October, so again, mirroring the waves from Microsoft, we've had quite a few requests about UK GT. So we plan to put that into the software, so it's another element of cost that we can manage a bit more accurately than we do at the moment. And also alongside with costs, there's automating the additional charges and the cost modeler, where you can plan kind of the different elements of cost that make up your product and try and plan what the sales price might be given a certain margin and so on. And then in the same way that going into the future, we'll be doing more work with LiveX. We've got an ongoing project to keep working on the warehouse integration with companies like LCB, Octavian, Great Bear, to integrate things like pick notes, receipts, purchase orders as time goes on. So I'll be able to give you more details about that nearer October on exactly what we're doing. So that's kind of the Business Central roadmap and the Bevica roadmap. You know, we have a list of what we're going to be doing and when we're going to be doing it, and they'll all be published on Freshdesk over time. In terms of then moving to SaaS, Karen was going to talk a bit about the practicalities of the licensing. Karen?
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Claudia. Okay, so when moving over to SaaS, the way that you license the solution has changed. It's moved over to subscription licensing on a price per named user per month. So no longer are there concurrent users. Every user is a named user now. Subscription pricing also means that you pay per user per month as well. So essentially you are paying for the licenses again. However, Microsoft does allow clients who are up to date on their nav maintenance to have a 40% discount. Now there's two levels of licensing available. You can sort of compare it to the current licensing that you have of full and limited users. However, the functionality available for those two are slightly different. So premium is a full user, anybody that needs to post anything basically. Team member licenses, they're very limited in their functionality. They're mainly there for approving and for viewing as well. There are some additional functionalities, but it is very limited and there's no kind of standard rule for those. So we prefer to keep it quite clean in the way that you would access, dependent on who needs to access it. And these are conversations that we can have to help you kind of decide that as well. Now, the subscription pricing does cover many things, and this is why you can't really do a direct comparison to perpetual concurrent users, because the subscription licensing for software as a service covers many things. So for a start, it includes the Microsoft enhancements, so only kind of hot fixes in there. And as Claudia was saying, those waves that occur every 6 months, they're automatic and they're included in there. So you can kind of wave goodbye to costly upgrades every 3 to 5+ years now. It automatically happens every 6 months. As Claudia did say, we are aware of what that is. And so any development or anything else that you have, any integrations, we're aware of those, and testing can be done to make sure that those are all going to be working fine with these updates. Now, the solution is hosted on Microsoft's Azure environment, and they do offer all the other things that you would expect from hosting. So these will be the backups and disaster recovery, obviously the server and the database maintenance as well. That's all managed within the cloud. Now, the way that the solution is accessed is via a web browser only. So there's no more Windows client. And the Business Central solution with Bevica is actually an app within Office 365 as well. So what that means is that is the way that you actually go into the solution via Office 365. Now, because it is web browser based, it does also mean that you can access it from anywhere. If you've got a Mac, if you've got a phone or a tablet, it's very easy for access on the go as well. What the access also gives you is one production database and a maximum of 3 test databases as well. If you want to move over to the next slide, Claudio.
Yep.
Now, because you are going through Office 365 in order to access the SaaS solution, the way that TVision is allowed to manage that environment for you means that you have to agree for us to be a cloud service provider. Now, this doesn't mean we're managing your Office 365 environment. We're not at all. But in order for TVision to be able to purchase the license through QBS, who's our license distributor, manage your licenses and manage your environments, and also manage the updates, the waves that come every 6 months, you have to agree for us to be a cloud service provider or solution provider, and we do need to have global Office 365 admin access. Now, I know this is a contentious issue, and there are ways that we can still be able to manage and implement for you if that's not allowed. I do have an FAQ if anybody wants to see that, to look at the options, but I'd just like to let everybody know up front that we do need that access. We have looked in with Microsoft for all the reasons why, so we have explored all of those options. There isn't anything limited, it has to be global, but like I said, there are some options that we can have if that is definitely not going to be allowed. So it's worth having a look at that information beforehand anyway. Now, on the security side, in order for you to kind of have a look to understand what activity is being done within your environment, what happens is that there is a monitoring section in the Azure Active Directory Admin Center, which has audit logs in there. So like I said, if QBS has done anything regarding, the kind of the licensing, or if we have done anything on the environment, you'll be able to see that. Now, the actual environment, as we said, you're on the Microsoft cloud, and so therefore when you install the solution, you are agreeing to Microsoft's cloud environment. Claudio's put a link on there as well, and that will give you lots of other information onto there. For example, it will let you know about the database backups that you have. They're carried out weekly by Microsoft. Differential database backups are down hourly, and transaction backups are down every 5 minutes. Then the automatic backups are retained for 14 days. Clients do have the ability to download a database export file, and additionally this does provide a way for you to download the file locally in order to import it into a local database if required. Now, the amount of gig you have available on the Azure hosted database is 80, but you can, if you need to have additional space, you can purchase more as well. Okay, that's me.
Okay, so there were just a couple of other moving over to SaaS practicalities that I just wanted to cover. So from a technical point of view, there's no object designer anymore. So those of you who are a little bit more technical, who are used to going to the object designer, that's disappearing. The ability for you to manipulate or change pages, reports and things becomes a lot more difficult because you don't have the development environment installed on your network, if you like, that like we would at our place. It's not impossible, but it becomes a bit more difficult. And then because the SQL server, the Azure SQL server is managed by Microsoft, there's no access, there's no direct access to it. You can still access the data, you can extract the data, you can look at the data, but you can't use, you can't run SQL scripts, for example, to look at data or manipulate data. In terms of how we would run a project from enterprise to SaaS, they would be re-implementations. The structures, whilst they're very, very similar, they're different enough that we can't easily just migrate all the data from one to the other. And really, we think we'd take this as an opportunity to clean up older systems, decide what functionality we do want and we don't want. And to do that, the assumption is that we would start with Bevica SaaS as the product. Anything that would have been in the standard product that's not in Bevica SaaS, we will move over to Bevica SaaS for you to have access to. And then any bespoke work that you need in the new system, that would be moved over to Bevica SaaS. So the idea is that you would have a new system. I can't guarantee that it'll work 100% in the same way, but the principles, the business principles would still work, and you'd be able to run the processes that you currently do. So for that reason, we would move across open balances rather than all the historic data. We have designed places in the new Bevica to store, for example, sales history from either previous versions or other systems, and that would merge into some of the history that's in the product. So up to now, we've talked about SaaS as being the obvious upgrade, and that's definitely what we would recommend. But there is an alternative called the hybrid model, or basically it's an on-premise model. So what we can do with Bevica SaaS is we can install the app on the SaaS environment that Microsoft provide us, or we can install it alongside the base Microsoft app on a on-premise server. So basically that means that you would have an on-premise version of Bevica SaaS. It wouldn't have all the links and functionality, or as easy links and easy functionality than if you were in the real SaaS environment. But if you're worried about, I don't know, things that we mentioned like performance or database size or just access to your own data, there is an alternative that we can talk through if we need to. But our starting point for all this is the SaaS model. We'd like to get everyone on the SaaS model, and then if there's a reason not to, we can investigate the on-premise version. So that's kind of our overview of where the product is, the roadmap, and the things we might need to consider in terms of moving over. I'd like now to go into Business Central Bevica itself. And really, I want to kind of cover three main areas. One is how it looks in terms of the SaaS environment. So the things that are quite different to what the on-premise version is, how easy it is for it to integrate into the Microsoft world and how that all looks. Then looking at the Business Central features, it is all pretty much what you've currently got now, just given that it's a version, it's a lot newer version than you've got. So things like opening sales orders, posting routines, the way journals work, it all works in the same way, just the interface is slightly different. And then a few things on Bevica where we've tried to keep the same concepts as everyone's used to, improve them where we can, but integrate them more into the natural way that that Business Central works. So if you bear with me a second, I'll stop the presentation and go into the product itself. So, right. So I always start this side of things in the Office 365 environment, just to show that it's quite easy and simple. It all works quite nicely. I'm sure most of you've seen this already, but if I go into Outlook, what we did at TVision is we bought 2 Microsoft licenses. So we are a bona fide Microsoft customer, or Bevica is. So we get all the Microsoft emails about all their products. So if I scroll down here, all of these are all the sorts of things, and all the sorts of things that Microsoft just will be sending for the products they're changing. And I was quite surprised at how much they send. It's a bit overwhelming for all their different types of products, all the things that are being improved, changed, etc. And it takes forever to go reading through all of it. But what specifically I wanted to show you is if I click on an email, so this is an email from a customer, because the link into Business Central is native, here, for example, it's recognized that the email is about a particular invoice. So if I click on that, it'll open up the email, the invoice. So this is a posted invoice. There we go. I can expand it out. So from Outlook, I can basically, I'm now looking at Business Central. From here, I can do all the sorts of things I would do in Business Central. I can print, I can approve, cancel, create credit notes, everything that you could do normally. I can also, from here, there's an Insights tab down here, Business Central Insights, that because the email address is held in Business Central, it's now showing me that I work at the Asala Bar and Grill, and this is effectively the customer card that I'm looking at from inside Outlook. If I scroll down, so these are the tiles that we all recognize. I can click on Open Sales Orders, probably make that a bit bigger, a bit more useful. And then from here, again, it's as if I was in Business Central. I can do anything I want to. So that's just one example of the integration with the Microsoft products. So close that, close that. So let's go into, so this is what the product looks like. You'll recognize the tiles, you'll recognize the layout. This is a particular role center. There's all the role centers that you're used to. What I want to do before going into the functionality, I wanted to show you some of the kind of more slightly admin things, not because I think particularly you'll be using them yourselves, but just so that you are aware that they exist and to kind of demystify how the product works. So if I go into my settings, this is where you'd set your company, your work date. And also down here, when you receive notifications. So if I click on notifications, so these are pop-ups that appear on pages that each individual can decide whether they want or don't want to appear. So if I scroll down, you'll see here, I've switched off a few, which I find particularly annoying. So Microsoft will keep adding them to the notification to here, and we can add notifications. So if there's something that we want to be triggered on a sales order or an item card, we can add it here. have it ticked, and then users can decide if they want to see it or not. Yeah, so that's the My Settings. If I then go to Assisted Setup. So one of the things that Microsoft are trying to do is give you guys more information, more ability to do things yourselves. So this is just one example where they've created, in some cases, wizards, in some cases, links to videos and documents. So for example, if I wanted to have a look at customized document layouts, I can click on that and it'll take me to their website where there's a bit of information about how this all works. If I scroll down, you'll see down here. So these are the ones that tick, the ones that have already been done, and then there's some video. So this kind of gives you an idea of where Microsoft are trying to say, these are things that might not be there ready out of the box, but you can go in, investigate, and decide if you want to use them rather than having to come to us. So in advanced settings, there's just two areas I'd like to quickly show you here. So extensions, this is how the software is built up. So every piece of software that is written either by us, by Microsoft, or by another partner is an extension, and they're all published into this list. So the base application, as it's called, is Business Central. So that's the one that gets installed first. Then everything else relies on the base application. So you'll see that, for example, if we look at Business Central Intelligence Cloud, that's another Microsoft extension or app that relies on the base application. And then you'll see that there's a whole load of TVision ones. So these are ones that we've written, and that one there is our base Bevica Essentials app. So that's effectively a file that we make available and gets installed using, oh, not on this page. There we go. We can publish, uninstall, upload extensions from this page, and then it gets deployed, a bit like the FOB files that some of you are used to importing into the Object Designer. So that's our base app, and then we've also created other apps for other bits of functionality where we think technically they kind of grow on each other. So we've got, that's our warehouse integration app, then credit control notepad. This one here is our additional costs. And then if you have things like Jet or Continua installed, you'll also see lines here for the different bits of functionality that Jet and Continua will give you. So the version numbers here on the side relate to the version numbers that I publish on our Fresh Desk releases. So you can always see if you're using the latest version. If you're not, you can just grab the app file and install it. Then the other thing I wanted to show on is the service connections. So one of the things Microsoft, again, are really pushing on the SaaS model is the connectivity to services available via the web. So I just wanted to try and do an online demo of UK Postcode service. So I'll show you how that works. So this is provided by a company called Get Address. So they've written a little wizard. So let me go through the wizard. So I click, I want to get address. They want me to create an API key, but obviously I don't have one yet. So they've given me a link to their website. So they have different plans. I'm just going to pick the free one. Just grab my Bevica email address. Say I'm a robot. So hopefully in a second, in my Bevica inbox, fingers crossed, I should get an email. This is where hopefully I don't have to wait too long. We might come back to it if it's not, it doesn't appear in a second. Okay, I might come back to that one. Yeah, I'll come back to that in a second. One thing to notice with these apps, that if they are apps provided by third parties, we have no way of modifying those apps. So this particular get address app that's installed in the system, what we've spotted with some of our customers that have tried using it is that it doesn't 100% meet the needs. If that's the case, we don't have the ability to change it. We'd have to try and find either an alternative app that does exactly what we want or write a bespoke app. And I think that's true for all the apps that you might find on the app source or that you would install on Bevica that are not authored by us. So just one last go up here. Oh, that's a real shame. Oops. Oh, has it gone into junk? Oh, there it is. It's gone into the junk. Right, let me just finish this off. So I copy the API key. Paste it into there, say OK. Okay, just telling me I should read terms and conditions, that's fine, say OK. So if I close that, open this up and then go to, for example, the customers page. Okay, the Asaba Bar and Grill, come down to a postcode. Okay, so that's found, that's gone and used, so that's using that service, and then I can put in the TVision address. So admittedly, this is quite a simple service that's built into the software using a third party, but the idea is that's how Microsoft want everything to be that simple. Now, obviously not everything can be that simple, but the principle is that because everything's in the Microsoft environment, all the permissions, the authentications, everything in the background that you would normally need to set up is kind of all done just by the nature of you having a license, so you don't have to worry about it as a user. Right, let's go back to just see if there's anything left here. The admin center was the last thing on the kind of the technical side I wanted to show you. So this is the, we would need access to this like Karen was saying, and this really is kind of the back end of how you manage the system. So we were talking before about these upgrades that happen every 6 months and there are hot fixes every month. And we said they're automatic. They're not quite automatic. So Microsoft, via your emails, so if I click on notification recipients, so these people here will be on Microsoft mailing list for all the updates for the product. So if you're on this list here, you will get all that huge list of emails that you saw before, and they will warn you of updates to the software. So they'll warn you about the hotfixes that they're coming, that they'll be put into your test system. They'll warn you about the wave updates, and you can manage if they actually go live or not here. So if we had dates here, this would tell you that there's an update going into your live version or your test version, and you can stop those updates until you're happy that you've tested them. So although Microsoft go on about that they're automatic, they are in terms of making them available to you, but you do have some control over when they go live to make sure that you've been able to test. Okay, let's go back into, oops. Okay, so on the role center, it looks pretty much what you're used to. You have the tiles, you have a kind of KPI area. The navigation pane has disappeared, and instead we've got the navigation along the top. And then this section here is a kind of shortcuts or bookmark area where you can create any bookmarks that you want, and they're very easy to add and to remove. One thing I wanted to show you here was that the feature management in terms of the upgrades that we were talking about. So there are some things that Microsoft have changed or will change in the software that really kind of are a bigger change than just a nice new piece of functionality. So what they do is that they warn you about it here. They tell you when it might go live. And at a certain point before it's being released, they let you try it out, as it's called. So you can come here in your test system, click on the try it out, run with it and see if it, if you like it, if you don't like it. So here you can see that I've been playing around with new email capabilities, which works very nicely. It just makes interacting with emails better. The one here that I'm quite interested in finding out about for the future is this sales pricing experience. They have something called a sales price list that I'm really curious to see how that would work, because I think if it does what I think it does, it'll be quite interesting for us. And here in the Learn More, like everything, you can go in and have a look at what it's supposed to do. This never gives you the entire information, but it's a start. It's nothing like getting your hands on the software itself. So back to the role center, you have the navigation pane, quick links to lots of things, KPIs, the tiles that we all know about, tiles more, and then further down we've got more KPIs, more graphs that you can add and remove, so you can customize everything. And then here we have the Power BI. So because we've written some, or Ben has written some charts in Power BI and linked them into our Bevica SaaS environment, we can pick from a list of reports that have been designed for our role center. So users will be able to see this list and pick and choose which reports they want and change them as and when they need to. And then down here I've got some reports that are running on a job queue in the background. One other thing that's quite interesting here, another example of how Microsoft links into, where's it gone? Oh, overdue predicted payments. So again, with the ability to link into the kind of the back end of Microsoft and their big data and common data model, you can set a process going that they will try and predict of your sales invoices that are not due yet, which ones will be overdue or which ones people will not pay on time. So they call this payment prediction, and they fill in these two fields here that this list is filtering on. And this is an example of where Microsoft are kind of teasing a little bit, where they've written a standard algorithm in the background to come up with what they think will be a late payment or not late payment, but they let you create your own if you want to, or pick different types of models. So here, a standard, they let you only use the standard one. Pick the standard one. You can create your own model, and you can have a look and see how this model is created. So this would be, you'd set this up, you'd let it run overnight, every night, and then the next morning you'd see a list of invoices that they think will be late. But it's just an example of how the ability in SaaS to link into the bigger Microsoft world is kind of quite simple and easy. Okay, so going into a little bit more detail about how the functionality works. It looks very much like what everyone's used to. You have your customer card, customer list. You can do all the things here that you could do currently. So you can filter, you can sort, you can search for things. There is this nice search button here that searches on every single field rather than just a particular column. So if I put GR, it'll find everything that's got GR in any column across. That's particularly useful on the item list. Fact box is on the side, as before. One nice feature that works very well in SAS is the edit in Excel. So you've got your standard open in Excel, which would push out everything I can see directly into Excel. But the edit in Excel links the Excel spreadsheet directly back into Business Central. So if I open that up, just let it go and do its bit. So there's an add-on that's automatically installed using my login. It'll just take a second to grab the data and show it. Here we go, any minute now. Okay, so this now, any change I make here, I can publish back into Business Central. So if I wanted to change credit limits, so let's just grab that and push the credit limits down. Let's scroll across, and then because I know someone will be thinking it, even if they don't ask, if I put a salesperson code that doesn't exist, if I then publish, it's going away, pushing that back into Business Central, validating all the fields as if the user was manually putting the fields in, and then here it's telling you that there's a problem, and the problem is with that particular salesperson code that JRX doesn't exist. So if I clear that, do done. So if I now close this because I'm not interested in it anymore, go back to Business Central and just refresh the page, you'll see that all those credit limits now have all changed to $250,000. So it's a bit dangerous, but in the right context, it is quite a nice way of updating data quickly and easily. If you don't want to use Rapid Start, for example, which is another way of doing it. So customizing pages works just as well as current versions. You can move fields around, you can hide things, you can display things. So this is the fact boxes on the side. You can move fields around. It all works pretty much as you'd expect. So if I now go into slightly a bit more detail about kind of the Bevica changes that we've made. If I go to my items. So the item list has vintage, percentage alcohol, duty rates as normal. One of the biggest changes is probably availability. So in older Bevica, you weren't allowed to put a quantity on the sales order if you didn't have the stock. And that's very good for stock availability and promising quantities to customers, but it can be a bit restricted sometimes if you just want to record demand on a sales order and manage who gets the stock. So what we've done when we've moved over to Bevica SAS is kept it a bit more in line with the way that the standard product works, where you can put any quantity you want on a sales order and then manage from those quantities who gets availability of that stock or who we can promise it to. So some of the things that help us with that is if I click on here, projected availability, you can see that this is the way that the system thinks about stock. So it's all date related. And in this case, we're looking at both duty free and duty paid stock. So if I change that to weeks, you'll see if I expand here on the sales orders and the purchase orders or the demand and supply lines that make up these quantities, you'll see that some of them are just a requirement, but some are reserved. So reserved means that it is allocated for that customer. So it means that I can put 100 on a sales order, but allocate 50 of those to a particular, to be reserved for that customer. So bringing free stock down by 50. So probably the easiest way of showing you that is on a sales order itself. So let me go into sales orders. So new sales order. So bar and grill. So if I just tab off, what it'll do now is it's gone to find the default shipping address, which is something that's new. So we can set a default address that we want to ship to. In this case, I've made it a duty-free address, a bonded duty-free address. And I've created a wine list that gets automatically created on the order with quantities. So these quantities at the moment, you'll see, are not reserved. So these are here if I want to. Let me create a new line. So if I copy and paste. So here you'll see if I want to, oops, hang on. I can put a completely stupid figure in. So it's not stopping me from creating that demand from a customer. If I want to reserve or allocate quantities against this sales order, I can do it in bulk if I want to, but just to show you, I can create a Bevica reservation. And here I can reserve against item ledgers, so stock. So let's say it's for stock that I want to deliver next week. Or if I want to reserve it against purchase orders, I can do that as well. So the cases where you might reserve against purchase orders is potentially for paid reserve or on primeur transactions, or if you know there's a limited quantity of stock that's coming in the next couple of months and you want to start allocating it against that stock now, you can do that. And if you reserve it against a purchase order, when that purchase order gets receipted, that reservation moves from purchase order to item ledger, so then you can deliver the physical stock. So I think that makes the sales orders quite a bit more flexible than they currently are, where we might have had to use quotes or unpaid reserves to try and keep track of who we've promised stock for. You'll see also there's rotation number and best before dates. So that's where I said that we've improved this slightly to make rotation numbers a bit more robust in the system. So if I select that allocation of 5 there against that order, and I scroll across, you'll see that it's recorded. Okay, I can't see it, but it's recorded that rotation number against that particular item ledger entry. So if I need to tell the warehouse that a particular rotation number needs to be picked, that's the way I would do it. Okay, so coming back out. So that's probably one of the biggest changes in terms of how the software works. Just to quickly show you some of the other areas, we've got 15 minutes left. So if I search up here for paid reserves, so you'll recognize the paid reserve summary. So this works in the same way where we can sell into paid reserve. A nice feature of the latest version is that we have these things called smart lists, where you are able, or at the moment we are able, to merge 2 or 3 different sets of data and make them all available on one page for you to have a look at or export to Excel. So what we're looking at here is our paid reserve records with information about the customer. If I scroll across, so we've got provenance, condition, etc. The customer, the product, and then item information. So you'll see here that we're pulling information from the product into this smart list, as it's called. So merging lots of data from different places into one screen, which we've never been able to do, and it worked really nicely here for our paid reserves list. Now, at the moment, it's only something that we can do from a technical point of view, but Microsoft have said that they want to make it available to users so that you could create your own smart lists rather than having to export data into Excel and do pivot tables, for example. You'd be able to do those pivot tables inside the software and make them available for everyone to have a look at. So that we'll keep an eye on that and see when they make that available for users. Okay, I want to leave a bit of time at the end for any questions. So that really was kind of a quick run through. So hopefully you'll see that it's different, but it's the same. All the things that you'd expect, all the features that you're used to are all there that you can take advantage of.